Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So we talked about uncertainty. Last time we talked about the transition we're going through. We talked about where we are kind of in the arc of history. Just to summarize, we're going through end of a cycle and beginning of another cycle. Last time, I think we talked about the theory of the fourth turning, right? And we realize now we're at the end of the fourth turning, and we're at the end of a seculum. You know, if anybody who knows this theory knows that basically it's called the crisis. The last period is called crisis, and we're going through it right now. Be it COVID, be it some social unrest in the United States, or all over the world. You're going to start seeing more and more of that. And finally, it will probably culminate in the next 5 or 10 years, according to Strauss and Howie, it will culminate probably in some sort of military conflict and or financial collapse. I'm not trying to be apocalyptic here or to get clicks, but I think you have to understand that cycles, everything is very kind of like up and down, right? So we're finishing 85-year-old cycle, and we usually finish it with a bang, and we're going to start a new cycle probably in the next 5-10 years. So last time we talked about what you guys could do to not only to survive this kind of turbulent and stressful time, but to thrive in it. So today I want to talk from my point of view. Again, just to remind you guys, I live in Florida. I'm an immigrant from actually Ukraine, well, of the former Soviet Union. Came here 25 years ago, blessed to be in this country. I'm going to make a video actually about the United States, why I still think in 2025 it's still a great country to move to and to live and to start a business. So we will discuss this. So today I want to talk about how, for you guys, the purpose of this channel is to kind of encourage you guys to have a better life, a more abundant life, both physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And today we're going to talk about maybe one of the most important topics in life is called money, right? And our relationship with money, how to sort of to think about it in the context of the next 5 or 10 years. So first of all, I want to talk about, about kind of the thought of money, or maybe the concept of money. I'm not sure how it was in your family. In my family, money was considered to be kind of a dirty thing, both of my parents were teachers, and they really didn't make a lot of money, and they really looked down upon people who made a lot of money, calling them crooks, calling them frauds. My dad used to say, "Oh, to make this much money, you must have stolen it." So overall, I grew up with pretty negative kind of context with money making, greedy, money-oriented, kind of like a dirty things and negative thing. That was kind of drilled into my mind as a kid. And that pretty much that was going on. My parents kind of grooming me to become a professor, university lecturer, and intellectual, and that was going very well up until about, I think, 9 or 10 years old, when I came across a book, actually autobiography of a businessman. I read this book, and again, it was a fictional autobiography. I think it was written by an author. I don't know if many of you are probably not familiar with. Because we read it in the Soviet Union and used to give us all kinds of propaganda books about how terrible capitalism is. So the librarian, usually librarians would kind of feed you this propaganda. You'd come like as a kid, ask for books, what should I read today? And they would give you, oh, take this book, that's going to be good for you. And ultimately it's going to just paint like how terrible capitalism is, how terrible America is, right? And this was a story of a businessman who kind of rags to riches, who was very poor. And he rose to become, like a mogul back in the 19th century, where he was to be one of the top. Again, it's a fictional character, but he was one of the top operators and builders of railroads. And the story of his life, how he built his business, how he failed many times, how he ultimately succeeded. And again, the story, there was a part of the story that does not end well. And that's why the librarian gave it to me. It's part of the story where he commits fraud. And he goes to jail, but then he really regrets it, and he comes out of jail, rebuilds his life, rebuilds his company, and thrives again. So that book really fascinated me. I was like, it was a trilogy, right? It was like 3 books in a row. And I went back to the librarian, and the librarian goes to me, back in the Soviet Union, she goes like, "No, do you hate those capitalists? Do you see what they are? How they're money-oriented?" And I looked at her, and I was like, again, it was like probably I think late 80s, early 90s. And I tell her, listen, not only I like this book, I love it. Do you have more of this stuff? So she looked at me, and she goes like, okay, I guess the brainwashing for, anti-capitalist brainwashing did not work on this kid. But since about 9, 10 years old, I became fascinated with business. I wanted to be this kind of person who kind of understand finance, understand money, investment, stock market, all those things kind of fascinated me. I don't know why. Some people get fascinated with, I don't know, birds, people, music, sports. But I mean, I get fascinated with business like early on, and basically I started reading more and more about business, about different people. Mostly, I want to understand something. I usually try to understand the people in this industry. So I started reading a lot about business people, and I get to see them kind of in a different light. I think most successful business people in general, they got there through some big chunk of luck, hard work, innovation, probably ingenuity, and just grit. Just going through it, overcoming the obstacles, overcoming the naysayers, and they got to where they got by overcoming multiple obstacles. I mean, you don't have to look far, Again, a controversial figure, Elon Musk, many people in real estate, Steve Schwarzman of Blackstone, Mark Zuckerberg, right? You also social networks. So again, these are the people that kind of like you could see, yes, good or bad. I'm not saying, but I'm saying that this is the people that I would read about their biographies or try to understand how they got to there they got. Now, one important thing, I think it's so basically to finish here, I think I discovered as a kid, that basically money was neutral. It's not good or bad. It's kind of like a knife. It's how you use it, right? You can take a knife, you could become a surgeon, operate people, save their lives, or you become a murderer, right? With the same tool, you can kill people, right? So money is the same thing. Money is neutral. The question is, what do you do with this? Do you use it for good or do you use it for bad? How can you use it for good? So I personally, I had a lot of great mentors, and one of the mentors, said, Alex, if you want to make a lot of money, just pass it forward. You made $1, donate to something or help somebody. You can be donate to charity, or maybe you can help another guy start a business. And I think actually, honestly, this is one of the purposes of my channel, is to help you guys, figure out business, figure out investing, and live a life of abundance, not only physical, but also mental and emotional. So first of all, if you guys have negative emotions, negative connotation, negative context about money, I want you to understand why. Understand why you're having. Maybe you're like me, you grow up in a community, in a family that had a very negative relationship about money. So try to understand it. Maybe try meditating in this, try journaling it, and really get to the bottom of this. Like, why do I think making money is dirty, making money is corrupt? All those business people, maybe you knew somebody who was corrupt, maybe you read about somebody who kind of, really repelled you. So try to understand that. Now let's talk a little bit about, so now we kind of understand the mindset. So money is neutral, and to really attract money, and I'm going to get a little esoterical in this channel, you have to pass it forward. I know a lot of people who try to retain money, like kind of save money, like really like hoard money, I would say. Most of the time, nothing good comes out of it. They probably lose it in some silly investment, or really some other misfortunes comes to them. Money it has to pass through you. Obviously, it has to go into productive purposes, right? Going to Vegas and burning it on expensive vacations and cars. Nothing wrong with this, but if that's kind of the main purpose of why you make money, to spend it on things or on vacations, I think it's nice, but that's now not what's going to make you successful in business. I think what makes you successful in business is giving away money and investing it, or with a purpose. With a purpose, with intention of increasing the value of this investment. So we will talk today very briefly about the book that I like today to discuss with you guys, and that's what we're going to talk about the money, right? It's a great book, highly recommended. It's called, let's see if you can see this, Guide to Investing, Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, right? So Robert Kiyosaki became a multi-millionaire from those books, coming up with this concept of rich dad, poor dad. Basically, there was very educated, his own dad of this in the book, that he was highly educated, and he was in academia. He had a PhD, but really he had very little control of his time, of his career, and eventually he gets laid off, and really like lives this life of helplessness, of poverty, both physical and emotional and spiritual, I would say. That's ultimately the story. Versus Rich Dad, it's another fictional character, right, in the life of Robert Kiyosaki, who was maybe not as educated, but he was always either a businessman. He would buy businesses, he would invest businesses, he would operate businesses. He had those two people in his life, his own dad, right, the poor dad, highly educated, career-oriented, kind of climbing the corporate ladder type of guy, And he had this kind of scrappy, not so educated, but the guy who kind of was street smart, understood how to run businesses, understood how to run, how to invest money, understood, So we will talk about those two people briefly, those two types of people. I think majority of people nowadays are going to work for somebody else, becoming an employee. And Robert Kiyosaki actually creates this cash flow quadrant, which is, to me, when I read it, when I was like late teens, I think early 20s, I read this book, really eye-opener. It was one of the books that changed my life, honestly. If you want to read a book that will open your eyes, it's maybe a must reading. If you really want to build a business and become a better investor, become an investor, period, you must read this book. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He talks today about the cash flow quadrant, right? So I'm going to attach a picture here. They divided it into 4 parts, right? In the first quadrant, there's an employee. A person who has very little control over his time, who's very little autonomy over what he does. Also, usually employees told what to do, when to do it, and where to do it. Right? There are a lot of highly paid employees, but ultimately the vast majority of employees I met are very unhappy, and because their earnings are sort of capped. It's even the most even attorneys or investment bankers, they get paid a lot, but there's usually a cap on this. And I would say probably in the United States the current cap on majority of employees, again, majority. I'm excluding like extremely highly paid, like people like traders, investment bankers, certainly like celebrity doctors, usually $500,000 a year, right? Which is very nice. But to get there, you have to go through a lot of education and work really, really long hours. When I say long hours, 12, 14 hours a day. I worked in a bank. I had a lot of friends who are investment bankers, and that's what it takes. The second quadrant is S, letter S, and it talks about self-employed. So who are those people who are self-employed? You would think about maybe like an accountant or an architect or a lawyer or a sole proprietor, right? So that's a person who has his own business. He's a one-man show, and basically, all the income that comes to him comes through his own work. It's a little better than employees because this person decides to, stop working and maybe go travel, right? He can choose, he has more flexible this time, right? So that is definitely better. And again, those people have more time, more autonomy than employees, but ultimately, if they stop working, the cash flow stops. On the right, there's two other very interesting quadrants called B, quadrant B, and the lower bottom quadrant I. B stands for business owner. So I own multiple businesses in different areas, different industries, and B, so it's a business owner. You own a business. You could have some employees, few employees. A lot of it could be automated, maybe one employee. But you provide services or you sell products. Okay, that's the business owner. Business owners have a lot more flexibility than either employee or self-employed people, because ultimately once they set up a business, the idea is to set it up really, really well. Understand all the processes, create SOPs, standard of protocol, and basically train people to do your job. Either to do all of it, part of it, and then you have some freedom of time. So if you think about being a business owner, yes, in the beginning it's very hectic and very stressful. Setting up a business, building a business, build multiple businesses, not easy, pretty stressful. But ultimately, and again, I failed in building a few businesses. That happens also, and it's okay. It's another important point. Failure is part of life. It's okay to fail, and I would say probably fail early and often. If I have to give advice, if you take one line from this video, fail often and fail early. Okay, when I say early in life, and learn from that. So I built a few businesses, I sold a few businesses, I failed in a few businesses, and that was a great lesson. You learn from failures a lot more than you learn from successes. Finally, the last quadrant is the quadrant I, right? The quadrant I is an investor, right? I met the greatest investor in the world, and I sat down with him and I talked to him like pretty much I was part of a small group, but we sat down and talked for a few minutes. I talked to Warren Buffett, and he asked him, are you a business owner, or because he owns a conglomerate of different businesses, or are you an investor? He laughed, like Warren Buffett. If you talk to him or if you watch him on YouTube, he always chuckles. That's how he speaks. You would ask him a question, the first thing he would do would chuckle, And he said, listen, Alex, I'm both. And he said it in a funny way. He said it like, he said, I am a better investor than most business owners, and I'm a better business owner than most investors. So he travels between those two quadrants, both understanding how to run a business, and he has people running those businesses, and what he's famous for is being a great investor. My message, if you watched the previous video, right? We have a lot of uncertainty coming up now, whether it's inflation, war, some social upheaval, layoffs, companies shutting down, and one of the biggest ones that many people are beginning to pay attention to is AI. If you listen to Bill Gates or other people in AI, at least 30 to 40% of the jobs of people sitting in front of a computer will be eliminated in the next 5 years. 5 to 10. I think 10 is being generous, but a lot of the jobs that exist today, and some people think of menial jobs, cashier clerks or toll booth collectors. No. I think we're talking about like really serious jobs. We're talking about coders, computer programmers, talking about radiologists, people who look at X-ray screens. We're talking about a lot of legal people, like lawyers and paralegal, right? Sometimes I need to prepare a contract. I send it to my lawyer. He charges me 2 hours of work at maybe $350 an hour, $700. Or I try to ask ChatGPT to prepare a contract, an independent contract, and it did a better job. ChatGPT was faster. It took him about maybe 5 minutes with some tweaks back and forth, and it was free. Versus my lawyer taking a day and 2 hours of work. I don't know if it really took 2 hours of work, but that's what I was charged for. And definitely, ChatGPT will outsource. I would say probably help eliminate a lot of illegal profession. So we're going to have this kind of wrecking ball, going through the economy with economic uncertainty, AI, layoffs, and other stuff. So if I can give you kind of like one recommendation, again, I'm just sharing my knowledge and experience, being an investor and owner of multiple businesses. Try to stay in the right side of the quadrant. Don't be an employee. Now you can be an employee to learn. I think I've been an employee. I tried it. I learned a lot. I worked for a big company that trained me well. And you can be maybe a self-employed person, but again, your income is limited to how much hours you work, right? Or what you produce. And that's it, right? You can be so I recommend being a business owner where you set up a business, you put people in the right place, you train them, and you become the ghost in the machine, as they say, right? You either work part-time or you don't work at all, and then obviously you have to supervise business, and we're going to talk about that in another video, but that's another option. And you can adapt, pivot your business based on what's happening, since we're going to be going through a lot of changes. And ultimately, after you became a good business person and had some experience under your belt, you can look into investing. Investing requires, you need to understand investing, so it's learning about it. And it's learning multiple books. You don't need to go to college, by the way, to be a great investor. It's reading books, going to seminars, talking to people, and having mentors. Very, very important. I'm going to talk about mentors in another video. It's extremely important. And so being either a business owner or an investor, or maybe both, ideally, be like Warren Buffett, be both a business owner, learn business, understand it, become a better investor. And I think this mindset and this experience and this focus will help you not only survive the next 5-10 years, but thrive during those 5-10 years. So if you guys like it, please, if you have any comments, questions, please submit them in the comments. I'm happy to hear from you. And if you found this video helpful, please subscribe. Thank you.